Hey everyone, and welcome to the Mystics of Texas. Today we got a really exciting video for you. We're going through the book of Isaiah, and I have to say, if you have never read it, it is probably one of the most interesting books in the Bible. We have a lot to go over. This has a very complex spiritual and literal design we have to go over here. But first off, let's just start off with Isaiah is talking to the kings of Israel and Jerusalem, and he is predicting their downfall and how God is going to use other empires to destroy them. Right there is a very interesting part that is just right out in the open. So, Mr. Schmidt, why don't we just go to our chapter by chapter where we like to start off, and let's see what you got, and then we'll go over some more overview stuff as we go on.
I absolutely am happy to do that. This book is so fascinating because many of the other books have been such a disappointment in that we have had a big lack of trying to find spiritual guidance from. And this book was no disappointment. And if you people out there want to really get into something fascinating about where is the spiritual message, do you think that the book as they portray Jehovah, God, is good or bad? This is one of the books that you really want to stay tuned for and stay to the end because it is fascinating.
Or if you just like dragons, there is a bunch of mention of dragons in this book and some very odd references to the Jehovah character in relation to those characters.
There's a lot of interesting things, so it is fun to stay with us, and we will make this as entertaining as you can with some of this what I would define as kind of evil. So it starts off with the visions of Isaiah. And he says, Hear, O heavens, and give ear, O earth, for Jehovah hath spoken. Sons I have nourished and brought up, and they transgressed against me. It seems like this is a running theme throughout the Bible that Jehovah gets upset because he thinks everybody transgressed against him. Like he is a real petty tyrant.
It happens quite often. I'm glad you brought up the petty tyrant thing because there is a certain section where Isaiah has his vision of God that I would really like to get in depth with that petty tyrant theme.
Right. It's he says, a seed of evildoers, sons, corrupters, they have forsaken Jehovah. It's all this sort of poetic rhetoric that is just amazing because his definition of being transgressed upon and what he refers to as evildoers are, people that don't make offerings and
not necessarily don't make offerings, but don't make them in the correct places. Like God in chapter 1 gets upset with people doing the odd sacrifice in their fields and not bringing it to the temple.
Right. Even though because you're honoring Jehovah in what you thought was appropriate and in your way, giving homage and respect to Jehovah, he calls you're an evildoer, which, alrighty then. And he says, every head has become diseased and every heart is sick. I mean, he sounds like a whiny baby is what he sounds like. Your land is a desolation, your cities burnt with fire, your ground before you, strangers are consuming it. And a desolation as overthrown by strangers. I think it's odd, strangers, because if you are not of Israel, then you are a stranger and you are an outcast.
It is. It is also very interesting how often the theme of fire, which you just brought up, is woven into this book in almost every facet. Reading this book, it is almost like, if you know anything about where we live in East Texas, we have lots of trees for paper. Well, they cut them all down and they do a slash and burn method. Cut them down, burn them, and then the new seeds pop up. And this is basically God's plan through Isaiah of this book. The way that he's mentioning fires, that there's still a kindled seed, that he's got to burn out the existing people to come with this new seed, which seems to be the case far too often, that the current generation does not please this God, and he needs to get to the next generation. He needs to get to the kids, the impressionable young minds.
That's exactly right. akin to the Hitler's Youth. He has to raise them from young.
I'm sure he read this book of why he had so many of his dislikes towards a certain group of people, we'll just say.
Right.
I'm sure he read it.
Well, you go, this is like Sodom and Gomorrah. So to Gomorrah we hath been like. So he's comparing these people as a bad place, bad cities. Y'all have been horrible. And all I can say is let's all stand up and clap in appreciation of let's go, Brandon. And in your spreading forth your hands, I hide mine eyes from you. Also, when you increase prayer, I do not hear. Your hands of blood have been full. So if you pray to God, he's telling you, I don't hear you. I don't care. Pray all day long, buddy. I don't hear what you say. Wash ye, make ye pure. Turn aside the evil of your doings. From before mine eyes, cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek judgment. Make happy the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Strive for the widow. Come, I pray you, and reason, said Jehovah. If your sins are as a scarlet, as snow shall they be white. If they are red as crimson, as wool shall be, they shall be. If ye are willing and have hearkened, the good of the land ye consume. And if ye refuse and have rebelled, by the sword ye are consumed. By the mouth of Jehovah has spoken. So it's kind of nice, make happy the oppressed, or some niceties, but you have to realize the definition of what his good and evil is. It's not what we think, do unto others as you'd have done to yourself, or any of that kind of notion. It's, hey, you better bring your animals to kill them in the temple and not in your garden or in your field. That is evil to Jehovah.
Yeah, and not treat your neighbor as yourself, but to treat your neighbor as an outcast and not to associate with them. Don't intermingle, don't intermarriage, don't even get along with these people. And if you don't do what I say, I'll use those people to come and conquer and kill you.
Right, and make happy the oppressed is very confusing to me, because he being Jehovah oppresses all of the strangers and everyone else. So it's hard. So it's hard to understand. What do you mean, help and make happy the oppressed, when Jehovah himself is always happy to oppress people? It's very confusing. Yeah, your point.
Well, my point was going to be that in this book, you have the exile to Babylon that God has already put his people through. So this book is kind of interesting because where it places in the literary line. We go back to 2 Kings in some of this book. This is a lot of past tense, and then you get to the latter half where it's 150 years into the future, where Isaiah obviously could not be speaking. This is someone else's words. So where this book lies is very interesting because it's partly before the oppressed and partly after the oppressed, but God is the one doing the oppressing. So God is telling you that I'm doing the oppressing, so you might as well be happy with it, because what else are you going to do? Right. I'm God, allegedly.
Yeah, it's a strange thing. So continue on, because this is just the tip of the iceberg in strangeness. The prince are apostates and companions of thieves. So the princes are bad, which normally that's the case. Everyone loving a bribe, sounds like today, and pursuing rewards. The fatherless they judge not, and the plea of the widow cometh not to them. After this thou art called a city of righteousness, a faithful city. Zion in judgment is redeemed, and her captivity in righteousness. Though those forsaking Jehovah are consumed. That is just that's a lot. I condensed some of the highlights in this first chapter because it's strange. You're a city of righteousness. You're a faithful city, and then at the same time you're also consumed. It's confusing. It's a whole state of confusion. I think and obviously you can play on that no matter what your perception of the book is. You can play it either way. You can build congregations around whatever perception you have.
Just as this first chapter is very interesting on what you just said, that they're righteous people, but they're not righteous. Because if you just go back to really almost the opening lines where God is getting angry at the people sacrificing the bullocks in the field. So they're righteous because they're doing the sacrifices that they were told to, but they're not doing them the way to the letter that God has previously said. So they are righteous in one aspect, but they're carrying out their righteousness in a completely different way, which is understandable. I mean, you say the path to hell is paved with good intentions. I mean, good and evil is perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And it hath come to pass in the latter day, or the latter end of days, established is the mount of Jehovah's house above the top of the mounts. So he has a good location. And it hath been lifted up above the heights, and flowed into it have all the nations. So that is confusing to me, because God says, even in chapter 1, avoid strangers, don't let strangers. So all nations are coming to Jehovah. And then he says, I don't hear your prayers.
Well, and it's really confusing when he says that he wants all the nations, because later on in this book, these certain kings and people ask for help from the Egyptians, and then Isaiah tells them that this is a bad idea. And then he doesn't like Assyria, he doesn't like Babylon. Then he raises another nation of Persia to attack and kill the Babylonians and set his people free. Like the whole concept of him wanting the nations, and then he doesn't want the nations, it goes back and forth. Like he's flip-flopping on the issue basically every chapter. Sometimes in the same sentence, he's flip-flopping on what he really wants.
That is absolutely true, and it gets much more of that as we continue. So you come to the conclusion just after the first few chapters of, wow, the way they portray this Jehovah, he is awfully fickle. I mean, like Dimension, like Let's Go Brandon.
Not only is he fickle, but he doesn't want people to take pride in the actions of what they do. No. That is one of the things that he is really upset about in chapter 2 is, oh, you think you're building these temples and you think you're doing right by me, but you're taking pride in it, which is wrong, which is really confusing. Your God doesn't want you to take pride in the things you do. It's very confusing. And the house of Jacob is evil because they do take pride in it. Like, where are you supposed to even take any of this information? Like, how does this supposed to relate to someone's daily life?
Well, to refer to Jacob as being evil when the whole Israelites, their whole name is derived from Jacob.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing. It's a strange paradox. And he hath judged between nations, and hath given a decision to many peoples. And they have beat their swords to plowshares, and their spears to pruning hooks. Nation doth not lift up sword unto nation, nor do they learn any more war. Okay, well, we just know that is a big crock of BS right out of that. And it says, O house of Jacob, come, and we walk in the light of Jehovah. For thou hast left thy people, the house of Jacob, and are sorcerers like the Philistines. So now the sorcerers are Philistines. We're already labeling other nations bad after he just says that he's wants all the nations, they're all coming to him, which is totally different now.
Well, it seems that if you're not coming to him, all throughout the course of history, just look at any wartime propaganda, you need to dehumanize the enemy because humans don't really want to fight and kill other humans. So they have to make these Philistine sorcerers. They're not your neighbors, they're sorcerers. They're not humans. They have to dehumanize them. And that's a ploy by God and his prophet And then there's a messenger that comes in later that you'll have to stay tuned for, because that is a truly fascinating piece of this work.
Yeah, what you just said reminded me of Cat Williams when he says, "I don't know any insurgents." You know?
Yeah, right?
It's the same thing, same thing. And its land is full of silver and gold, and there is no end to its treasures. So, of course, there has to be silver and gold mentioned a lot because apparently Jehovah is obsessed with silver and gold. So, the haughty eyes of man have been humbled. Humbled, they say. And bowed down hath been the loftiness of men. And set on high hath Jehovah alone been in that day. So the men have been humbled, and Jehovah is once again, he sits on high. And men have entered into caverns of rocks and into caves of dust because of the fear of Jehovah and because of the honor of his excellency in his rising to terrify the earth. Wow. I mean, that's a lot to digest, Mr. Schmidt, because this is I was reading out of chapter 2, verse 19. And first of all, why would a good God want you to fear him? And then you honor his excellency as he is terrifying. He is in his rising to terrify the earth. What kind of entity rises to terrify things?
Dragons.
Yeah, which is very strange. So as we move on to chapter 3, the Lord Jehovah of hosts, boy, he's definitely a host, all right, and turning aside from Jerusalem. So now he's not with Jerusalem once again, because sometimes he's with Jerusalem, sometimes he's not. It just depends on how he woke up in the morning.
Well, this whole first, basically 1 to 40, is about God's judgment. And somehow he's on your team, and sometimes he's not on your team. And God's judgment isn't what we think of as human and natural law. Yeah. Take that for what it is, but that's what you'll get out of this book.
That's right. And the people hath exacted man upon man, even a man on his neighbor. Enlarge themselves, do the youth against the aged. I mean, so the youth are against the older. And the lightly esteemed against the honored. So the people are fighting against themselves. For stumbled hath Jerusalem, and Judea hath fallen. For their tongue and their doings are against Jehovah. Man, that could mean anything. Like anything from all of the books of the Bible thus far. The slightest little thing that would appear to be non-offensive in any way, Jehovah thinks is evil. And you just don't know what that thing is until Jehovah passes judgment. And when you thought you were doing the right thing, Jehovah smites you and puts you a fire or some other stoning or whatever his mood is that moment.
Or Book of Job's you. He puts a Job on you.
Right, he pulls a Job on you. Wow. And Jehovah has stood up to plead. So Jehovah is begging now, and he is standing to judge the peoples. Jehovah into judgment doth enter with elders of his people. So Jehovah is walking amongst the people with his elders, with the elders of his people and its heads. And ye have consumed the vineyard. Plunder of the poor is in your houses. So Jehovah is walking around with the elders of the people. I guess he holds them in esteem at the moment. Who knows? It's kind of difficult to tell. And moving on to chapter 4 is, and it hath been he who is left in Zion, and he who is remaining in Jerusalem, holy is said of him, and of every one who is written for life in Jerusalem. So if you're written for life, you're holy. If the Lord hath washed away the fifth of daughters of Zion, and the blood of Jerusalem purged from her midst, by the spirit of judgment, and by the spirit of burning. Sounds pleasant.
Well, this is what I was speaking of earlier. We says you keep a fifth of the women. This is that slash and burn technique where God wants to have this one seed, destroy the stump, and this one seed, this ember, will populate and come back to the righteous. Because every so often within this book, and they like to go back to Sodom and Gomorrah in this chapter, they destroyed them and kill them. Because what is God always after? These people turn away from him, so he has to slash and burn, kill the current generation, and go to the next generation where they have young, impressionable minds where he can get to them. Just like we saw come into the promised land where Moses didn't get to go in. That whole generation didn't get to go in. You had Caleb and the new generation that got to come in. Every time we have these people that turn away, well, they have to be killed or sent off in the wilderness to die. They have to die. God never stays with his people. He makes all these claims to have this covenant with Isaiah and Jacob and Moses. And people will always tell you that, oh, God fulfills his covenant. Not with you. He might with your kin, but he does not fulfill it with you. Anytime that God makes a promise with you, you're dealing with a volatile genie in a bottle that's going to give what you want in a very roundabout, evil way. And you're not even going to get it. It's up to your descendants to get what you were allegedly claimed.
Yeah, and maybe.
Yeah, well, you might get it, but you have to do all these wars with the Philistines and Egypt and Israel and Babylon and everything.
Yeah, and his is another illustration of your point there. In chapter 5, verse 9, by the weapons of Jehovah of hosts. First of all, why does the God need weapons and in a terrifying way? I fail to understand that. By the weapons of Jehovah of hosts, do not many houses of desolation become? They're asking, great and good without inhabitant. So it's good that they're exclamating. It's an exclamation point at the end of this sentence. Great and good without inhabitants. Okay, so it's good that Jehovah has terrifying weapons and that we are without inhabitants. The work of Jehovah they behold not. Yea, the work of his hands they have not seen. Therefore my people removed without knowledge, and its honorable ones are famished, and its multitude dried up of thirst. Okay, so they haven't seen Jehovah's work somehow, and don't know, and so now they're honorable or famished, and their multitudes are thirsty. That's great. Thanks, Jehovah. The holy God sanctified in righteousness. I'm not sure if it's righteousness to famish your honorable and dry up the multitude in thirst and call that righteousness when if you're a father and you have sons and daughters, why you would not visit them with a loving open heart and discuss things, the betterment of humanity, how you can improve upon the individual. There's none of that. Oh, you just don't remember what I did back then, so I'm going to make you thirsty and punish you with terror. And good luck with that.
Spare the rod, spoil the child right there. We got to teach these people the hard way. God can't give spankings to everybody, so he got the next best thing, famine and disease.
Right. I mean, well, he's busy. It's just easier for him to come down and blow fire out of his mouth.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So woe to the mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink, declaring righteous the wicked for a bribe, and the righteous of the righteous they turn aside from him. Therefore, as a tongue of fire devoured stubble. He loves fire.
A tongue of fire. What do we make of that? A tongue of fire.
Yeah, and flaming hay falleth. Their root is as muck, and their flower as dust goeth up, because they have rejected the law of Jehovah of hosts. I mean, have you really rejected it? Because he really doesn't say anything. He doesn't define what evil is other than in previous books. There is no definition. And this is something, because they have rejected the law of Jehovah of hosts, and the saying of the Holy One of Israel despised. Therefore hath the anger of Jehovah burned among his people. So Jehovah is really an angry God. He has proven that in almost every single book of this Bible, that he is angry. He needs to go to anger management course.
Or, we talk about people being men of God. Maybe, all these crazy serial killers and sociopaths that we lock in cages, maybe we should just honorate them as wonderful people, men of God, because God gets angry and kills people all the time. He starves people, he locks them up. So why are we saying, oh, well, he's a good guy, he's a man of God? He's no man of God. That mass murderer over there is a man of God. They're the ones that are going out angry, shooting fire, and killing people. That's what God wants. That's what the God of this book wants for sure.
And that's what he demands of his followers throughout. And he stretched out his hand against it and smited it, and the mountains tremble. And their carcass is as filth in the midst of the outplaces. With all this, his anger, Jehovah's anger, did not turn back. So he's not easing off his anger. His anger is only increasing, and it did not turn back. And still his hand is stretched out to do more. God is reveling, if you will, in his anger. He's having a good time with it. And if you go on to chapter 6 in verse 10, it says, declare fat the heart of this people. And these are his people. These are the ones that are the chosen one, his loving people. Declare fat the heart of this people, and its ears declare heavy, and its eyes declare dazzled. Let it see with its eyes, and with its ears hear, and its heart consider, and it hath turned back and hath health. And I say, till when, O Lord? And he saith, surely till cities have been wasted without inhabitant, and houses without man, and the ground be wasted and desolate. So there you have it. He wants you to, with all your perceptive capabilities, to see how he will destroy everything for apparently his own petty pleasure, because he says you're evil with no definition other than you have to gain from the previous books the definitions of evil, which are simple little tasks that you didn't do. Like killing animals and letting whatever. So as we continue, it gets much more enthralling. So therefore the Lord himself giveth to you a sign. Lo, of course, lo, the virgin is conceiving. The virgin is conceiving. That is so interesting. It seems like the Jesus story. There's so many virgins that accidentally conceive without being penetrated.
Yeah, this is one of those really interesting precursor to the Jesus story. As once we get later on in the second half of this book, this is, some foreshadowing that we have a Jesus-like birth that goes through basically every story of the Jesus narrative except for the nice part. The virgin birth, people read the Bible and they say, oh, well, Jesus is special. He was born, then he lived, and then he died, and then he was resurrected. The same thing happens in this book, which is later on, and we'll go into much more depth, but just later on in this same chapter, then we have Isaiah where he gets a coal put in his mouth, and it's supposed to purify him and his speech, where he goes out to convert people and talk to them. And it almost seems like God wants him to put coals in other people's mouth, and if they either convert or they die. I mean, this is a really weird chapter. Just this one chapter is worth reading in its entirety if you've never read the Bible, or somebody has said, hey, you should read the Bible, or a book, or that, oh, God's wonderful glory and everything. And chapter 6 will give you a whole new perspective on all of it.
Yeah, so there is the virgin that's conceiving, and she is bringing forth a son, and hath called his name Emmanuel. And butter and honey doth he eat. And
because Emmanuel directly translates to something that's like God's with him.
Yeah, something like that. And so anyway, he refuses evil, and he is to fix on good. And the butter and honey doth everyone eat who is left in the heart of the land. It is kind of strange that you would have this immaculate conception in the book that precursors Jesus. So apparently there's another Jesus too, or Jesus-like figure.
Well, actually, if we go back into some of the other writings, this is not the first virgin birth either. So this is, I think we're actually on the this is the third virgin birth. But this story it completes all of it. It's yeah.
Yeah. So in chapter 8, it says, Jehovah had said unto me, take to thee a great tablet and write upon it the graving tool of man, with the graving tool of man, to haste spoil and enjoy prey. I don't know why you'd need to make that writing on a big tablet, to haste spoil and enjoy prey. That could mean a whole lot of different things to different people and to the people of the time. So it's a whole state of confusion throughout.
I think they needed to write it on a tablet for two reasons. Because they did not have the mass media of the day. They had, the billboards. You write it on a big tablet. And you had to still stay with this lineage of the good birth people. And this Emmanuel was still of the line of David. So that you had to announce that somehow. You had to have his picture. Will, you've got Matthew McConaughey doing his underwear ad in the middle of Times Square. This is the Emmanuel prop. You've got to write it on stone. That's the way I see it. Is in their Times Square of Jerusalem. Oh, here's Emmanuel, virgin of birth, bringer of everything, the Messiah. He's still of the line of David. He's amazing, which is very interesting to me in itself of how, through the entirety of this book, lineage has only been brought down through the male line, but this is now another immaculate conception through only the female line. And nobody ever says anything about that. I've never heard in any Sunday school lesson anything where they're talking about the lines and lineages. And now that women are basically dirt through the entirety of this book, we have these immaculate conception lines, but they're still through the line of David. How does that work for anybody?
Well, not only does it have, that's a good point, because they don't even mention the virgin who is conceiving, not even her name. But Emmanuel is a very important thing, and apparently a virgin conceiving is important enough to make a big deal about it here by writing it in this book. And no, you don't even know who it is. No, you have no idea. There's nothing.
There's no lineage. There's no line. She's just allegedly giving birth of the line of David.
To, of Emmanuel, which, this book has gone to great lengths to connect the dots of ancestors. Mm-hmm. Great lengths. Yeah, that is what it is. Kind of interesting point there. Jehovah of hosts, you do sanctify, and he is your fear, and he is your dread. This is in chapter 8, verse 13. So you sanctify him. He is your fear, and he is your dread. So your spiritual leader, your one that is going to give you comfort, and the one you go to pray to find solace and to find strength. He's your fear, and he is your dread. It seems to not go with the theme of God is good.
This is one of those interesting little snippets out, because this is Isaiah talking to the kings of the day and telling them where they're going wrong, and then that they're going to have this king save them. So it's really a convoluted story every way you look at it. But what's really amazing to me is still why. Like, why has nobody given this any more than, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. They're all going to die. Isaiah's saying it. Okay, let's move on. What's the next page? What's the next line? Tell me something good. Like, nobody stops to look at this and say, well, let's consider what's going on here. Now we're talking about these kings are going to die, and they're going to use all these other empires to destroy them. And these people are no longer any good, and I need the next generation to come in. But, well, this is still a good book. There's still holy things. You should live your life by it. By saying that these people are no good and they need to be destroyed to get to the next generation. These people are hopeless. All throughout this book, this is what it's basically saying, is the current people can't be saved. They need to be slashed and burned and destroyed to go to the next one. There is no talk of salvation in this book. There's no talk about what's future. There's no talk about heaven or changing people or becoming a better person, or even these people finding salvation into God. This isn't a story about Isaiah coming and talking to people and converting them over to his way of thinking. There's none of that. There is saying that this generation needs to go bye-bye, and then this generation needs to come in, and then we'll welcome this generation. There's nobody that can be brought up from this generation. We need to have an immaculate conception and have them boosted. We can't raise somebody out of the general population. We need this lie of this wonderful birth. We need all these lies. They can't just come out and say anything openly. Everything is trickery. It's look down over here and over here. Well, no, those are sorcerers. Don't ask for help from these people, but love and cherish your neighbor. Where does any of this stuff come in?
Not in this book. In Jehovah of Hosts, who is dwelling in Mount Zion, I found it interesting that in this book, like Jehovah is actually present. You know, he's actually physically walking with the elders, and he's actually living on Zion in this nice, perfect location. You know, he's apparently astute at finding real estate.
Or he's a dragon.
yeah, who knows? So in chapter 9, in verse 5, it starts with, for every battle of a warrior is with rushing and railment, roiled in blood, and it hath been for burning fuel of fire. For a child hath been born to us, a son hath been given to us, and the princely power is on his shoulder, and he doth call his name Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Father of Eternity, Prince of Peace even. It's a big title. To the increase of the princely power and of prince there is no end. On the throne of David and on his kingdom, to establish it and to support it in judgment and in righteousness. Henceforth even unto the age, the zeal of Jehovah of hosts does this. Wow, that is so not what he said in the previous chapters of this book.
Well, this is Mr. Wonderful he's talking about now, though.
That's true. Yeah, all you do is just change the wording. Oh, see, now he's not terrifying. He's not here to terrorize you and to strike fear into your hearts like a few minutes ago.
Well, until you go down another line and he calls the people all evil again.
Right.
Like 2 lines down from what you're reading, I think, something like that.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable. And the people have turned back unto him who is smiting it. And Jehovah of hosts, they have not sought. I wouldn't seek him either. It seems kind of psychotic. And Jehovah cutteth off from Israel's head and tail, branch and reed, the same day, it says. The same day. So, he goes from being the Prince of Peace to cutting off heads and tails. Right? In the same day, it says. So that the fickleness is overwhelming. And therefore over its young men the Lord rejoiced not. And its orphans and its widows he pitieth not. For every one is profane and an evildoer, and every mouth is speaking folly. Wouldn't you speak folly if all of a sudden God in the same day just absolutely turns on you and starts destroying everybody? And then he has pity for no widows, no orphans. I mean, what is an orphan, a baby orphan done to you, Jehovah? You created it, and now it's an evildoer, this horrible orphan. All of them. Yeah, it's strange. And with all this, not turned back with his anger. So he just continues with his anger in the same day. And still his hand is stretched out with anger. For burneth as a fire hath wickedness, briar and thorn it devoured. And it kindleth in thickets of the forest, and they lift themselves up in exultation of smoke. In the wrath of Jehovah of hosts hath the land been consumed. So Jehovah destroys everything, and the people is as fuel of fire. So Jehovah is just happy that he's using people as the fuel of his fire. And a man on his brother hath no pity. But just a few chapters ago, he's Mr. Wonderful, the Prince of Peace.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is a lot of this, again, fire, smoke, burning, there's a lot of fire in this book.
A lot. To turn aside from judgment the poor, and to take violently away the judgment of the afflicted of my people. The widows may have their prey. The fatherless they may have spoil. And what do ye, this is so strange, and what do ye at a day of inspection, and at desolation? From afar it cometh. Near whom do ye flee for help? Near to whom you flee for help. He's asking a question. And where do you leave your honor? It's so strange because he doesn't say anything like, why is he destroying it? He just says you're evil and wicked. No explanation of what they've done. None, because he just says how much he's a Prince of Peace and loves them. It's confusing. Again, without me it hath bowed down in the place of a bound one. And in the place of the slain they fall. With all this not turned back hath his anger. So he's still mad and still has his hands stretched out in anger. I mean, this is an evil guy or person or entity or dragon, whatever the heck it is. And he continue in chapter 10, for it has said, by the power of my hand I have wrought, and by my wisdom, for I have been intelligent. And I have removed borders of people, and their chief ones I have spoiled, and I have put down as a mighty one the inhabitants. He really likes to put down people. He seems like a bully in class that just wants to terrify other people. Yeah. And doth the axe glorify itself against him who is hewing with it? Doth the saw magnify itself against him who is shaking it? As a rod waveth those lifting it up, as a staff lifted up which is not wood. And the light of Israel hath been for fire. So all the light of Israel is for fire. It is Holy One for a flame. Okay, and it hath burned and devoured his thorn and his briar in one day. In the honor of his forest and the fruitful field, for the soul even unto its flesh he doth consume. So God just continues consuming every single thing, and it hath been as the fainting of a standard bearer. So he just can't stop. His hands are stretched out. Oh, fire, 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 die, die, die. I mean, it's kind of okay. And this is the book. This is the book we, as you mentioned earlier, we put our hands on it to swear to tell the truth.
Yeah, to take solemn oaths.
Yeah, so it's okay. Well, I'm going to pass on that one. The Lord Jehovah of hosts is lopping a branch with violence. Here we go again with Jehovah. He's just throwing around a branch with violence. And the high of stature are cut down, and the lofty are become low. And he hath gone round the thickets of the forest with iron, and Lebanon by a mighty one falleth. You can't stop.
Okay, so I think this is one of those wonderful passages that I have to comment on.
Please.
So this is Isaiah telling the kings of Jerusalem and all of Judaism and the 12 tribes that they're going to be slashed and burned if they don't do everything right, and they can't be prideful and holy and look at all this stuff. You can't be prideful and be held up. But Isaiah has a vision of God. And in this vision, there is this God character surrounded by all these spiritual beings. They are saying, oh, holy, holy, holy. And they are worshiping this God figure, which if you need to be worshiped, you are full of a vanity and pride that is insatiable, that you don't need just these heavenly bodies and figures worshiping you 24/7. You need the common people on the ground worshiping you 24/7. So doesn't this seem hypocritical of this God telling people not to be prideful and not to take pride in their work and not to have pride in this or pride in that, but the God that you worship needs to be worshipped because he has such a fragile and light ego that his pride won't stand up to people disagreeing with him on any level. Because if you disagree with this God, you need to be destroyed. You send down fire and anger, and he's going to snap you off like a violent branch. He's going to destroy your cities. He's going to burn people. He's going to have you thrown wholesale. Or if he doesn't do it personally, which he has done in many books in the past, he will rise up other empires to conquer you.
Or send his messengers.
Yes. Or do it himself. There's lots of times within these books where he does it himself. But though you shouldn't have pride. Pride goeth before the fall, unless you're this Jehovah God. And then it's the rules for thee, but not for me.
And the way it is described here, you not agreeing with Jehovah, it's his interpretation that if you, as we said a moment ago, if you worship him in your own garden and not at the temple, that is disagreeing with God. Because maybe you were raised in such a way where it was okay to go out in your garden and worship God. Maybe that was okay. Your parents said you always worship God. God is in everything. He's all around. But no, not this God as it's portrayed in the Bible.
No, I'm really glad you made that point because it's so valid. I've heard people in the past growing up, oh, do you go to church? Oh, no, I think that you can worship in your house and you can read the book and you can pray at home. Not if you ever read the Bible. If you read the Bible, you damn sure cannot. You have to go let those people indoctrinate you. You can't form your own opinions. That is evil by the definitions just in this book. Like I said, if you've never read any other book of the Bible, this is the one to go to.
Yeah, for sure. And in chapter 11, he says, he hath judged in righteousness the poor and decided in uprightness for the humble of earth, and hath smitten earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he putteth the wicked to death. He loves putting everybody to death. And what we just said, the wicked would be termed those same people that would want to worship him in their own gardens or fields. Yeah, and in chapter 13, as we continue, because it just gets way more interesting, so stay with us. A voice of the multitude in the mountains, a likeness of a numerous people, a voice of noise from the kingdoms of nations who are gathered, Jehovah of hosts, inspecting a host of battle. Jehovah is just inspecting the battle. He loves battle, so he needs to inspect them. They are coming in from a land afar off, from the end of the heavens, Jehovah and the instruments of his indignation, to destroy all the land. So, of course, Jehovah needs to inspect that because he loves destroying land. Even though he created everything and everything is perfect and everything is good to him, and then all of a sudden it's not. How ye? For near is the day of Jehovah, as destruction from the mighty it cometh. It's such an indoctrination preaching basically that, war is good and we should be as Jehovah. We should strive to be as Jehovah and judge other nations, and we should all rally and go to war and be proud of our sons in uniform. That is the indoctrination of this sort of rhetoric, this sort of writing. And it says, the day of Jehovah doth come, fierce with wrath and heat of anger, to make the land become a desolation. Yea, it's sinning, one he destroyeth from it. Never the definition of what sinning is, except previously with such things as worshiping him in a garden and not the temple, or gathering firewood on a cold day. It's considered evil. And I have appointed on the world evil. So God, I have appointed on the world evil. It's like I created evil so I can destroy evil at the same time, but my definition of evil is not your definition of evil. All right, I make man more rare than fine gold, and a common man than pure gold of whatever this is, Ophir, it's a city, or Ophir. Therefore the heavens I cause to tremble, and the earth does shake from its place. in the wrath of Jehovah of hosts, in the day of heat of his anger. Not anybody else's anger, his anger. Everyone who is found is thrust through, and everyone who is aided falleth by the sword. And their sucklings are dashed to pieces before their eyes. Spoiled are the houses, and their wives lain with. That is just really a descriptive stuff of that's evil.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. How much goodness have you found so far in this book?
Yeah, where's the spiritual value?
Well, he said that he's going to make men more rare than gold. And if we look at our common estimates of how much gold has been mined, we have about 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of gold. If you add that up by the ounce of the pound, that would make very, very few humans left on Earth.
That's true.
And he's already given a description of how he wants to kill them. By fire, desolate their land, stab them through, bash the sucklings, the infant sucklings against the rocks.
Yeah.
That is what your God and your prophet are telling you to do. And then I see Christians talk about how there's a sect of Islam that is very pro-war and, bombing themselves and killing people and innocents. Well, it's because your God that you also worship, because they get all their stuff from the Old Testament too, your God that you worship is all for throwing babies against rocks.
Yes, and running people through.
It kind of makes me think of that old baby joke. I guess how many babies does it take to paint God's temple? Depends on how hard you throw the first one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a horrible joke, and that is true.
Yeah.
It is true. It is crazy. And this Am have responded in his forsaken habitations, and dragons. Let me repeat that again. And dragons in palaces of delight. This is where we start the talking of dragons in abundance. There are many, many accounts of dragons for whatever reason. And maybe there were dragons. Maybe there weren't.
Or maybe the people that are in this book are worshiping a dragon. I mean, we've already seen tongues of fire burns a city with his breath. He uses all these weapons that appear to sound like some form of claws or a tail, long neck, horn scales. Go back and read all through the previous. You get a lot of dragon hints. He lives in a mountain, on Mount Sinai, in a cave, Zion, surrounded by a hoard of gold and silver. He wants to make all these references to gold and silver. It sounds very dragon-esque.
It does. And, there's just a side note, there's a lot of dragon lore in every single culture around the world and from ancient civilization. So it is interesting that it's in the Bible. It is. And on the land of Jehovah, you would think all land is Jehovah. It seems like just on the land would be sufficient, but you have to continue with it's Jehovah's. Don't forget. I don't know how you could when he's destroying and burning everything. For men servants and for maid servants, and they have been captors of the captors, and have ruled over their exactors. Okay. He who is smiting peoples in wrath, a smiting without intermission. He who is ruling in anger. He who is ruling in anger nations, pursuing without restraint. This is Jehovah. He is ruling pursuing without restraint. He is smiting people without rest, without intermission. He is on a warpath, and he is going to get what he feels he deserves, which is all the blood and desolation and suffering he can muster. That's what he does. And I'm continue to be shocked and awed by how evil this book is. I can't imagine sitting your child down in a Sunday school and reading this and talking the truth about what is in this Bible. But most of us been to Sunday school. It is not these stories. You except Sodom and Gomorrah. That's kind of a popular one in Sunday school, but they still make it where it's not bad. You know,
Yeah.
so
Well, it's really interesting, all this death and destruction. Again, this is God saying that he wants to burn all these people. And he's really talking a lot about the kingdom of Babylon, because the kingdom of Babylon, they're all high and mighty, and they think that they're the best and their gods are the best. And but God sells his people to the kingdom of Babylon. But now God is talking about burning and destroying these people of Babylon for being prideful and all this. But the God character, which I've spoken of previously, and in this book, Isaiah has this vision of him surrounded by these other heavenly beings and being worshipped. He wants to destroy the people on earth for doing what he does in heaven. Like, it's okay if I do it. It's okay if I'm full of pride. It's okay. But if you start getting a little pride, if you think that you're anywhere good, well, I'll rain down fat destruction on you. Like, I'm going to kill you. This is what's going to happen.
well, it's a strange paradox in that if we've been taught as kids in this society, if you've been raised in a Christian home, that you want to aspire to be godlike. You want to walk in the footsteps of the righteous, which would mean you want to emulate God. Well, God, you don't want to emulate God. If that was the case, everyone would be running around with blowtorches and and spears of stabbing people. There is no way you would ever want that to happen.
No, they would be all serial killers. Serial killers emulate God.
Yes, it's really outrageous. It's something to behold and be aware of. It's wow. How hast thou fallen from the heavens, O shining one, son of the dawn? Thou hast been cut down to earth, O weaker of nations. And thou saidst in thine heart, the heavens I go up, above stars of God I raise my throne, and I sit on the mount of meeting in the sides of the north. I go up above the heights of a thick cloud. I am like to the Most High. The beholders look to thee. To thee they attend. Is this the man causing the earth to tremble, shaking kingdoms? It's a question. He hath made the world as a wilderness, and his cities he hath broken down. Of his bound ones he opened not the house. All the kings of nations, all of them, hath laid down in honor, each in his house. So he's saying, man didn't cause this trouble. I did. I caused it. And everybody over there, you better bow down and attempt the best you can to understand what pisses me off. If not, I'm going to run you through.
Yeah, you're next, basically.
Yeah, you're next, buddy. And I have risen up against them, the affirmation of Jehovah of hosts, and have cut off, in reference to Babylon, name and remnant, and contour and successor, the affirmation of Jehovah. It is something that Jehovah hath formed Zion, and in it do the poor of his people trust. If you were of any class of people and you see everybody destroyed, I think you would have to say you trust them. Oh, I do trust you, Jehovah. Please, I trust that you're going to kill me probably no matter what. So maybe I can get a few more days in if I say I trust you. Ugh.
And he wonders why his people always turn against him every so often. Well, I don't know. It's probably because of your actions.
Maybe.
I mean, you want the people to have good actions according to you, but you don't think there should be a little give and take, and maybe you should be a little good to your people? What's Jehovah's idea of being good to his people? I'll take you out of slavery and let you wander through the wilderness for 40 years. That's a reward. Oh, there's a promised land, but you don't get to go to it. You thought you got... Oh, get out of here. The next generation goes to it. Oh, by the way, that land over there that I promised you, it just happens to belong to somebody else, so you got to take it. Like, I'm going to be at your back, but you got to take it. And then I want you to do really horrible things while you're taking it. Oh, look, y'all forgot about me again. Oh, it's going to be bad for you. I'm going to have to kill, like, everybody. I'm going to make men more I don't know. Let me see. What's something that I can judge it by? Oh, there probably should be more gold on earth than men.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable, and I like how they just make it so wonderful in chapter 16. Established in kindness is his throne. So his definition of kindness is also vastly different than our definition of kindness.
Yeah, because he said something about no wine in there, and that's really the only note I have from chapter 16. And I was like, you lost my worship right there.
Done. And one has set on it in truth, in the tent of David, judging and seeking judgment and hasting righteousness. I just find it rather a sick definition of kindness. That's your throne is kindness, is it? After you just said you were putting everybody to death. Okay.
Well, some people would argue that death is more kind than being alive.
Well, probably during this time, yes, it's something indeed. I just don't. It's hard to understand how people say, "Oh, I read the Bible," and I have to say, "No, you don't read it at all." You may read what you see a lot is people have these books that have just different passages on it all the time with different little snippet of stories as a motivational tool, but you don't actually read the Bible, because if you do, you come away with a whole different feeling than that nice book somebody gave you, or you stopped in the bookstore and got to get your daily affirmation or whatever. It's a different beast. And speaking of beast, the burden of Egypt. Lo, Jehovah is riding on a swift, thick cloud. All right, so Jehovah is flying around on his magic carpet, which is a cloud, and he hath entered Egypt and moved have the idols of Egypt at his presence. And the heart of Egypt melted in its midst. So Jehovah is flying around on a cloud and melting Egypt.
Yeah, this God character really has a problem with Egypt. Anytime that these people have went to Egypt or wanted to go back to Egypt, he's punished them. And right now they're being threatened by Babylon, and they want to not go into captivity, which God has sold them wholesale into captivity. These people are trying to save themselves from slavery by going to the biggest boy on the block, good old Egypt, and say, hey, well, you know, Egypt, we've had our problems in the past, but why don't we forgive and forget? God's not about that. God is like, those people did you wrong in the past. They're always going to do you wrong. They have to die. I don't know why. I've tried to execute them hundreds of times. But that's what God is saying right now. You go to Egypt, and I'm going to destroy you and Egypt. But these people are really just trying to get out of the captivity that God has already enslaved them to in Babylon.
Oh, well, God enjoyed killing their firstborn during the Moses story. It's unbelievable. And he says, I armed Egyptians against Egyptians, and they fought each against his brother.
A brother against brother to kill each other. God puts it into the brother versus brother. He wants them to kill each other.
And he armed them.
Yeah.
It's not that he said, hey, you guys don't fight. Let's sit down and discuss our problem. Let's work through it. Let's figure out how we can commune and fellowship together and work together. No, I armed the brothers so they can destroy each other.
It almost seems as if this magical Jehovah character were to come into the room right now, and he graced me with a pen and said, go stab your brother in the neck with it. There's your weapon. Go do it. I told you to. That's exactly what it sounds like he's doing. This God character.
It doesn't sound like it. That is exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, he's going misting over Egypt saying, oh, here's a weapon for you. You go kill your brother. Here's a weapon for you. It's like magical Saturnalia Christmas weapon day.
Right. It's like, who in the hell can read this and go, wow, I can't wait to worship this God as they portray it.
You know, what's really interesting is this God, throughout the course of many of these books, what has he given?
War and death, destruction.
Yeah, but no, what does he actually give? Weapons to people.
Oh, yeah, that's what he gives.
Yeah, so when you have a problem with this city, here's a magical horn. You blow this and you blow it down.
City walls, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's weapons in the temple. We've learned that they store weapons in the temple. God is now giving swords or weapons to fight brother against brother. This God doesn't give salvation. He doesn't give motivational speeches. This is no Gandhi. This is a Hitler saying, "Here's a gun for you. Here's a gun for you.
Well,
Here's a gun for you."
I think I think it's worse than that. I think he's
Far worse than that.
Stalin or Mao. I think he makes Mao look nice.
Like all of them look nice, actually.
Yeah. It's something, and each against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. And emptieth out hath been in the midst of the spirit of Egypt, and its counsel I swallow up. He's bragging about swallowing up these people, and they have sought unto the idols, I guess, and unto the charmers, because they sought anything else but this evil bastard, and unto those having familiar spirits, and unto the wizards. And there are even wizards in the Bible. And I have delivered the Egyptians into the land of a hard Lord, and and a strong king doth rule over them. An affirmation of the Lord, Jehovah of hosts. Oh, thank you, Jehovah. Thank you. It's wow. It's like you just. It's like for the man who is believes in his uprightness and his goodness, and wants to do unto his neighbor as he would have done unto himself. You would just have to stand up to these kind of bullies no matter what. Oh, well, you're going to run me through, but I'm going to stand up to you and let you know you're evil. Just as Moses has done. Moses confronted God with his evil. Many of them have. It's kind of crazy.
Well, in this story, he claims to be evil, and because later on we're going to get into where the people of Israel put God, Jehovah, on trial for his actions. There's going to be a full trial where God is trying to answer and justify his actions a little bit later on.
Yeah, it's strange. It just says, in that day is Egypt like women, and it hath mourned and been afraid, because of having or waving of the hand of Jehovah of hosts, he is waving over it. In that day there is an altar to Jehovah in the midst of the land of Egypt, and standing pillar near its border to Jehovah. It is interesting to me that, and it hath been for a sign and for a testimony to Jehovah of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they cry unto Jehovah from the face of oppressors, and he sendeth to them a Savior, even a great one, and hath delivered them. Delivered them into what is the question? And known hath been Jehovah to Egypt. And the Egyptians have known Jehovah in that day, and had sacrifice and present, and vowed a vow to Jehovah, and completed it. And Jehovah had smitten Egypt, and smiting and healing. He smites them and heals them. He smites them and heals them. And they have turned back unto Jehovah, and he hath been entreated of them, and he hath healed them. It seems rather nice of Jehovah. Thanks, Jehovah. I don't know what their definition of healed is, because now you need instead of a Webster's dictionary, you need a Jehovah's dictionary for his actual definitions of what these terms mean. In that Jehovah of hosts did bless it. Blessed is my people, Egypt. He said, blessed is my people, Egypt. That's the first we've ever heard that Israel is not his people.
Well, that's just because he has sent a civil war into Egypt, and they either had to convert or die. It was brother against brother, so now God has forcibly sent his spirit and dropped weapons onto Egypt and said, well, y'all fight. Whoever lives, I guess you can be mine. So when he's talking about the people that get healed are the people that have converted. So if you convert to whatever this religion is, the God worship, then he'll heal you and save you. So now he is letting them know that if you convert, you will be healed and saved. So now Egypt, the ones that are left, are now his people.
I mean, it's Jehovah being the tyrant, dictator, petty person that we see ruling nations, almost all of the nations of today. It's almost the same thing. You're going to do it exactly my way, or I'm going to kill you. And if you do it exactly my way, probably still going to kill you.
But it'll be less of a painful death.
Yeah, maybe. It's unbelievable how this goes on. And in chapter 22, it says joy and gladness. Joy and gladness. I mean, I'm so filled with joy and gladness from all this killing So, slaying of oxen and slaughtering of sheep, eating of flesh and drinking of wine, fat and drink, for tomorrow we die. All right, so we're going to be joyous and gladness today. We're going to eat and drink wine because tomorrow we're dead. And okay, and it revealeth that hath been in mine eyes by Jehovah of hosts, not pardoned in this iniquity to you, till ye die, said the Lord Jehovah of hosts. I'm not pardoning any of you. You're going to die. Okay, thanks, Jehovah. We appreciate that. It's mighty kind of you. Appreciate it. Okay, and in chapter 23, it says, in many waters is the seed of Sihor. The harvest of the brook is in her increase, and she is a mart of nations. Be ashamed, O Zidon, for the sea speaks. The strength of the sea says, I have not been pained, nor have I brought forth, nor have I nourished young men, nor brought up virgins. So the sea, I guess, is the seed of Sihor is a bad thing because there's no virgins. Jehovah of hosts has counseled it to pollute the excellency of all beauty. So Jehovah counsels, he gives his advice to pollute the excellency of all beauty. That is what Jehovah does. Pollutes the excellency of all beauty, to make light all the honored of earth. Pass through the land as a brook, daughter of a Tarshish. There is no more a girdle. He just loves destroying beauty. Wow. I was so shocked. Even as you read it, you just continue just these shocks. Like all of a sudden you got a cattle prong and you just read, did I read that right? Jehovah wants to, is counseling people to destroy everything that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Bzzz, there's your cattle prong. You're like, wow. Okay. And Jehovah is emptying the land. This is just a common occurrence, and is making it waste. And Jehovah, he hath overturned it on its face and hath scattered its inhabitants. All right, thanks, Jehovah. We appreciate more of this. It seems like sometimes you would just get tired, but again, it said previously, there is no intermission. There is no rest for Jehovah. He must continue to destroy. Mourned, fadeth hath the land, languished, faded hath the word, languished have they, the high place of the people of the land. Yeah, they're languished. It's like, what else can you be? It's unbelievable. And, of course, in chapter 25, O Jehovah, my God, art thou. I exalt thee. I confess thy name. I don't know what else you could do. I mean, you'd be in a state of fear like he wants you to be.
Well, if we really get into this, he has destroyed and laid waste to all the earth at this point. And this is that slash and burn method of which we spoke of earlier. He's already destroyed everybody. And this, from 24 to 27, is Isaiah talking about the new Jerusalem, the new hope, and the new future to go into the kingdom of God and have a whole kingdom of peace on earth and to even escape death. These are what we're talking about. So somebody, we've got to open it up in chapter 25, or somebody wants to worship this God character, because if we didn't, then the story would be over. So now we got to go back into this cycle of somebody likes God.
Somebody. Yeah, somebody loves God. Well, at least God, he has swallowed up death in victory, and wiped hath the Lord Jehovah. Okay, well, thanks for that. He turned aside from of all the earth, for Jehovah had spoken. So turn aside from all the earth. Okay, no matter what these other people are exalting and saying about you. And one hath said in that day, lo, this is our God. We waited for him, and he saved us. This is Jehovah. We have waited for him. We joy and rejoice in his salvation. All right.
Well, I mean, I guess if everybody around you is dead or dying and you're alive, and this figure says, I think you should probably worship me. Oh, God, I've been waiting on you to get here, man. I'm so happy to see you. I mean, I thought it was going to be forever until you came. God, thank you. I mean, God, I'm glad you're here. Thanks, man. Should I bow down on my knees now, or do I need to like get a spanking or something first? Like, come on, tell me what I need to do to stay alive.
Yeah, that's just something. It's crazy. In chapter 6, it goes on, it says, Thou destroyeth all their memory. Um, I mean, I guess it's easy to destroy a nation's memory when you wipe them out. There, there are no more.
We know during that time it was probably very easy to destroy their memory. Since he's burning everything, all he's got to do is burn the centers of knowledge, their libraries, and kill a few that know how to read and teach them how to read his new language. And it's really quite simple back then.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it says, I started cracking up when I read this, even this from Jehovah of hosts had gone out. He hath made counsel wonderful. He hath made wisdom great. Well, his counsel was destroying all things beautiful.
Yeah.
That's his counsel. That a rebellious people is this, his sons, liars, sons not willing to hear the law of Jehovah. You know, if I'm seeing Jehovah killing everything beautiful, I don't want to know the law of Jehovah either.
No. Well, at least in chapter 27, God will slay dragons for us. So, there's that.
That is true. Yeah, you have a lot of dragons. That is dragons. It makes me think of Game of Thrones, except he is the one that is going to win. every time.
Well, I don't know if he's going to win. I mean,
Yeah, who knows what that. Yeah.
I mean, he wrote the book, so he's going to win in this version.
Yeah, just on the whole dragon theme in chapter 30, verse 33. The breath of Jehovah as a stream of brimstone is burning in it. I mean, those kind of references are all throughout this book. There's too many of them just to even mention because we'd be here all day. But it is something. It makes you think that sometime, whenever they were writing this, it's either some type of literary reference, or it actually has some sort of reference in mysticism, or maybe dragons were real. Who knows? I didn't live back then. I don't know. Maybe I did in another reincarnation. Woe to those going down to Egypt for help. Yeah, don't go to anywhere for help, especially Egypt.
If this God is so good and his laws are so wonderful, why is it that almost every turn the people still try to go to Egypt? Like, just why? Can somebody that likes this book tell me, if Egypt's so bad and God is always on a warpath to destroy them, why do the people keep trying to go back to Egypt?
Maybe Luxor and Karnak and Cairo were really cool places back then.
They're really cool places now.
Yeah, right. So, who knows these things? And he also is wise and bringeth in evil. He also, let's repeat that, he also is wise and bringeth in evil.
Yeah, God will do evil.
He brings the evil, it says. And his words he hath not turned aside, and he hath risen against the house of evildoers. So he brings in the evil, and then he's going against the evil. It just leaves you scratching your head going, what and how in the world did this crap become religions of the world? It's just, wow, I could have had a V8. It's just unbelievable. It is something. Mr. Smith, would you like to continue, or would you like to make this 2?
Let's make this 2 videos, because I think we got a lot covered, and we have a lot more to cover. So I really appreciate everyone that stayed on this long, and we have more to give to you. You can catch us on all the alternatives: Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey. Also, we're starting an Instagram, and you can always get us on mysticsoftexas.com.
Yeah, you can find everything on mysticsoftexas.com. We want to thanks, and just join us for the rest of this. If you've enjoyed Isaiah and learning what's actually in it, just stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.
And have a good day.